Hey guys, it's Rachel. It's been a little bit of a while since I've done a live in the group, but we've been having a discussion this morning in the group on, how to charge or, can you even charge what you're worth? There's a lot of issues, lately anymore people feel like, well, I can't because, everybody in my Facebook group is charging like $50. So why should I be able to charge a livable wage? Why should I be, why am I any different? Right. I think it's hard. I think it's really hard when you start out as a photographer to feel like, oh yeah, no, I can rise above what I see people doing. You think, well, okay, this is what it is. But it's important to not fall into this trap that is so pervasive. Like our industry is so pervasively filled right now with people who are, saying, hey, $25 for a mini session and you get all of the prints and everything. And that's what that's going to be. And so it gets hard. It gets hard for you to feel like, well, why am I any better? Why do I deserve to charge more? And it's hard too because the more that clients see, hey, $25, that's what photography is worth, it's $25. There's going to be some clients who feel like that's all I'm going to pay, because that's what the going rate is for photography. So why should you charge what you're worth and how do you get there? Because it is important. Lately I feel like in photography, it's like a race to the bottom, and it's always kind of been this way. It's just getting more pervasive. So when I first started, it was kind of right as photography was switching over into digital being the primary means of photography. The 5D was the big camera du jour, and it was a great camera. But it's still, it costs a lot of money. People were still charging, hey, you want to have, a session. If you're going to have even a few prints, that's going to be a few $100s. You just knew that. Even if you went to the mall kiosks, sorry, my eye hurts. Even if you went to one of the mall kiosks, like Kitty Candids or something, you still knew that when you got your pictures taken, you weren't getting the digital negatives. And if you were leaving with prints, very likely you were going to be spending at least $100, even at a mall kiosk. But a lot of times, if you were going to have a whole session, especially if you were going to hire a photographer, I'm sorry, my eye is just going crazy. It was going to be in the realm of, high hundreds, maybe even $1,000. And then the race to the bottom kind of started. People were saying, well, I'm just starting, so I'm only going to charge, $250. And later that became $150, and it was $100, it was $80, then it was $50. Now, I'm seeing people all the time that are, it's $25 and you get the whole shooting match. And you can't be a business that way. You just can't. Like I'm not trying to be ugly, I'm not trying to be mean, I'm just saying you can't be a business that way. You have to cover costs. If you cannot turn a profit, you are not a business. Those are, they're hard words, and I'm not trying to be a hard person. I'm trying to be an honest person and save you from heartache, but you can't be a business if you aren't turning a profit. You really just can't. You're a hobby, okay? And the IRS is on my side, okay? So the IRS says you have 3 years to get it together, figure out how to turn a profit. If you can't turn a profit, then you are no longer a business. They will not consider you a business if you can't turn a profit within 3 years. And I get it. I get, that it's tricky out there, but photography isn't a cheap business, okay? Of course there's the obvious, the cameras, the lenses, the memory cards, your computer, your editing software, that's expensive, right? You've got to pay those bills. Just right off the top, those bills have got to be paid. And then, also obviously, very likely you have childcare, very likely there's wear and tear on your car, very likely there's gas money, there's all those things have to be covered, okay? To turn a profit on a session, you've got to cover a percentage of your camera, you've got to cover a percentage of your lenses, a percentage of all of these things, plus your childcare, plus your wear and tear on your car, all these things, okay, have got to be covered. Then there's other things, and and people are always surprised, but you need to have insurance. You really need to have insurance. I have seen people get sued and lose everything because they thought, well, Luna, you got to come in and now you got to go. Okay, here you go. Out you pop. Thank you. But they lose everything because they think, I'm not really charging a lot. Like, it's fine, no big deal. My camera doesn't cost a lot. And, and people say, I'm not going to do anything crazy. And I have seen people not have insurance. And one, I've seen them just lose a ton of money because their camera has an accident. And it's so crazy because I know people who have had cameras, who had accidents, who it totally killed the camera, killed the lens. I mean, they were out a couple $1,000s, right? And then you say, well, are you going to get insurance now? And they say, oh, no, that was just an accident. I didn't mean for that to happen. Yeah, I know. That's what insurance is for. Do you know what I mean? Or they say, or things like that. But I've also seen situations where people, as new photographers, there was a very sad situation where a child ended up falling in a river and whatnot during a session. And that photographer, you don't come back from that. You end up losing a lot of money. So you need to have things like insurance. You got to pay your taxes, all of these things. So you've got to pay all these things, and then you have to pay yourself, and you really have to pay yourself a livable wage, and not just for the time you're shooting, okay? Because you think, oh, well, whatever, I'm shooting, for an hour, right? Like, so if I charge $25, it's fine. It's $25 for an hour. No, you need to consider, okay, the time you spent working with this client beforehand. They emailed you, you emailed back, you picked a location, you chose your time, you came up with all of the pre-planning, you scout your location, you go, you do your shoot, you follow up with them via email, you edit, you post, you probably have to pay for a gallery site, all of these different things, all the time you take marketing, all of these different things are time that goes into the shoot. So it's really not just that it's an hour of shooting. I mean, it's probably a couple of hours at least per session, even on a small session. Okay, so if you're doing $25, over 3 hours, and then you take out your expenses, I mean, very likely you're down to like $3 an hour after you take out all of your, by the time you pay your babysitter and everything, I mean, you've got to be able to do this. Not only that, I mean, honestly, do you want the expectation to always be that you're going to charge $25? You really don't want that to be the expectation of your business. People go, oh yeah, that's great. We're going to go to so-and-so and we're going to pay $25. You really don't want that to be the way. You want to be able to say, if I'm going to be away from my family, if I'm going to buy this gear and use these clicks, because each click, it's that much closer to needing to be serviced. It's that much closer to needing to be replaced. They're not infinite. And you have to pay for things like that, for servicing your camera. You have to pay for having calibration on your computer. You have to pay for all of these different things to continue to be a legitimate business. Anyway, so, you say, okay, so how do I even get there, right? How do you start from zero and have people understand that you are not going to be purchased, you're not going to be able to be available for $25. How do you make that clear to your clients from day one? Because it's a hard thing. And I'll tell you, Crystal and I didn't do it right at the beginning, but we changed tactics and we did it right. So when we first went into business, we were like, hey, we're just starting, so we got to just kind of get some clients. Okay, so we tried it a couple times. We tried and for us, it wasn't $25, but it was more like $100. Okay, and it was no good. We didn't put out any parameters. Do you know what I mean? We just marketed ourselves those first couple times as the low ball photographer. okay, as the cheap, I'm just starting out photographer, okay? So the first couple times we did it, and then we learned because we were like, this is not working for us. Because I'll tell you, I want to tell you about our first 2 clients because we weren't valuing ourselves. And so our clients were like, okay, great. Like we got the clients who they weren't necessarily looking for a great photographer. They were looking for the cheapest photographer, right? And so they got us, and then they were like, hey, you know, you're not worth anything anyway, so we're going to haggle. So the first client that we got, we went, you know, we planned it all out. We met at a park, and the family comes, and the kids have their faces like coated in macaroni and cheese. You know, the like orangey yellow dust, like, you know, like dried on. And we were like, what? Because it was really apparent that they had really, really messy faces. And we were like, do you have baby wipes or something? Can we clean this up? And they were like, oh, it's fine. You can just Photoshop it off. Wait, what? You know, I was like, I can't even believe. Like, they didn't even respect us enough that it wasn't even worth it to them to wipe their kids' faces off. You know, and the situation was just crazy. The dad was super grumpy. I mean, we got the shots. Eventually, we got the shots, right? And then we went home and we edited and we delivered them. And so they had purchased. At that time we said, you know, $100. You can have a, you know, it was like I think 3 8x10, the session and 3 8x10s, or for the $100 you could have the session and 3 digitals, and you know, with the, you know, if you want to buy all of them, it's this much more. If you want to, whatever. So they had purchased the print option. We had printed them. We mailed them to them. And then we get hit with a dispute through PayPal because they had paid us through PayPal. This was like almost 10 years ago. And we were like, wait, what? Like, we delivered all your product. And the guy emails us and he says, yeah, well, you know, and just so you know, like, I will drop that PayPal dispute if you give me all the digital images. And we were like, no. That was not what we had agreed upon. You know, we have it in the emails. We didn't have a contract at the time either. But we have it in all the emails. You know, you agreed to the print option. He goes, what? This isn't your family. Like, what are you going to use the pictures for? You're not even going to use the pictures. You should just give me the photos. And he was basically trying to extort all the photos from us. You know, luckily we had all this in writing. We sent this to PayPal. PayPal sided with us. But this guy did not, from start to finish. I mean, they didn't care enough to wipe their kids' faces. The guy was trying to basically extort the photos from us. You know, I mean, overall, it was just like, these guys are cheap. We don't even care. We don't care what their style is. Like, we just want photos for super cheap. And it was a terrible experience. The next one was we had a bride and she just would not, we had a contract then, we at least learned. She wouldn't sign it, and we're like, okay, fine. She's like, I gotta take it home and look. Oh, well, first we gave it to her, and then she said, I couldn't read it. I couldn't open it up on the digital thing. And we said, well, okay, you should have let us know. And she goes, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't want to bother you. So I need to take it home and read it. And we were like kind of stupid, and we go, oh, well, okay, yeah, no, that's fine. You take it home and read it. And we shot her engagement session that way. And we should have just said, you know, geez, you should have let us know, you know, let's sit down and read it together and sign it. That's what we really should have done. The next time, you know, her bridals come out, she goes, oh my gosh, I forgot it at home. And stupid again, we shot her again. And she, you know, she hadn't paid, she wouldn't sign. And it was always these little reasons, but she wasn't respecting what we were telling her to do. You know, because we were just the cheap photographer. We were just, you know, she was doing it because a wedding needs a photographer, and I'm just going to hire these guys because they're the cheapest. She didn't care what it was that we were offering. She didn't care what our business was about. She just was glad that, you know, hey, there's a warm body filling it. So she was not respecting it, and we hadn't respected ourselves. And so we were in this situation. So it comes close to time for the wedding, and we're like, no, we really have to be paid before the wedding. And she goes, you know what? I just feel like maybe you guys aren't going to show up or something. So no, I'm not going to sign this. And she ended up leaving. She took off, and she had 2 sessions that we had given her, and she never paid, never signed anything. And we didn't end up shooting her wedding. Yay that we didn't end up shooting her wedding because it would have been a mess. But yeah, so the first 2 times we tried the race to the bottom, okay? And it totally backfired on us. It was not a good situation. So I'm just explaining, we didn't respect ourselves. Our clients didn't respect us because all they wanted was the cheap photographer. The cheap, hey, great, that's fantastic. You fit the bill as a warm body who's gonna just, snap some shots. That I don't even care. That's not important to me. So Crystal and I were like, okay, we need to kind of rethink how we're doing this thing because we are getting clients that we are not having a good experience with. And, the thing was we were executing these shots well, but, can you show macaroni and cheese faces on your website? No, I don't want to shoot more clients who think macaroni and cheese is acceptable to wear to a session. So we weren't getting anything out of these. We weren't really getting paid. It was all going to, babysitters and all of that. Like we were not getting actually paid, okay? And then we were having to deal with crazy and all these back and forth emails and it was like, good grief. We definitely were not getting paid. We definitely learned a lesson. We got an education, but we weren't being paid. So how do you go about getting your clients? Because, it's hard to reel people in if you're like, hey, I'm brand new in town and I cost, $500 for your session. We charge more than that now, but let's just say $500 for your session, okay? Yeah, it's hard. That's going to be really hard, right? How do you get your name out there, but still keep your value, okay? And I understand that that's going to be tricky, but let me tell you what we did. And it really worked for us. It really does work in establishing your value. And actually, it starts to bring more people who value photography. So first of all, I'm going to say, if you just got your camera and you're like, hey, I sort of want to be a photographer and I want to just, start learning all about it, you don't charge. That's where you take your kids and your friends and whatever, and you just learn the ropes, okay? You learn exposure, you learn white balance, you learn how to edit, you learn how to use off-camera light, you learn all of these tools that you need to be a photographer. That's just what that is. That's like you go to college and you pay to learn. Here, you put in the hours and you learn how to be a photographer, okay? So that you don't go out and solicit clients, you don't make promises, you don't charge, you just skill build, okay? So skill building is entirely different than portfolio building. And yeah, you need to make sure that you have got the skills to deliver. That's just what that is, okay? So if you don't have the skills and you're like, yeah, I know, but I'm not as good as the other person, I'm still practicing. Well, then you are not a business. You shouldn't be charging. That's what that is. And again, I'm not saying it to be ugly. I'm saying it to be truthful. So the next thing that happens is, okay, so now I've got skills. Okay, I have developed a style. I understand how to go out there and shoot a session and get the required images and deliver those, okay? And deliver them in a timely manner, okay? I figured this out. And now I deserve to be paid for my skills. Well, yes, you do. So how do you get your name out there? How do you portfolio build, okay? This, I feel like, is a really critical phase where a lot of people, that's where they trip themselves up. They think, oh, I'm getting myself a client base when they're just charging, they're $25, they're $50. But I promise you, you're not, because these people are always going to expect you to be the lowest price photographer. And as soon as you say, yeah, well, now I'm going to charge 100, 200, 300, 500, 800, whatever it is for your session. When you start saying, look, I'm going to charge a wage that I can pay my bills, that I can buy food, that I can, pay my mortgage, these people will be gone and they will just find the next $25 photographer. So getting these people on your side, that's not a long-term business strategy, okay? These people are not going to be loyal to you as a photographer. They're not going to fall in love with your style and be like, okay, I was paying $25, but now I'll pay $500. They're not going to do it. As soon as you rip that Band-Aid off and raise the price, they're gone. Okay? And you have to consider, as a photographer, it's not that you go in like an engineer goes to work and 9 to 5, they work, they get paid. You know, most photographers, even busy photographers, aren't shooting every day of the week, every day. So you have to charge enough to not only pay like an hourly wage, but you need to fill in the time that you're not working. You need to make enough money as a photographer that you are bringing home a real wage. Okay, so when you are going out to portfolio build, you need to establish your value. How do you establish your value? What we did when we were starting out and we were saying, hey, you know what? We really, really, really need to have some people. We need some warm bodies. We need to show what our skills are. We need to get our name out there. And so we would say, hey, we are looking to do a shoot. And for us, as we first started, we said we were going to do them for free. And we said, okay, you need to look like this. You need to wear this. You need to do all these things. Okay? So we put that out there. And so we only, basically we styled the whole thing. So it wasn't people coming to us with their macaroni and cheese face. It wasn't anything like that. It was, we kept tight control over this. And then we told them, we said, hey, you will get a certain number of images. And yes, you're getting them free because, we're going to be using you on our website. But as you understand, this is how much it's going to cost. This is, so we would invoice them. $500, here it is, but portfolio building discount at that point, minus $500, zero, here you go. So they understood that their images had value. They were very cooperative because they were getting $500 worth of stuff for free. And then as we started getting a little bit more into it, it was, hey, grand opening sale, 50% off. And people were like, wow, this is great. Yes, because it's a grand opening sale, 50% off. It's $250. This is a $500 value. People were much more excited. You invoice them and you say $500 minus grand opening sale, $250, right? And people are starting to say, wow, these are really, really good images. These are really great. And I'll tell you, one thing we've always done, even though Crystal and I, we've just always been, we have so many kids between us. We have, let's see, she has 5, I have 8. So 13 kids between us. So, we don't do in-person sales. So I'm sure there's way more money on the table that we could be picking up. But for us, we charge between $800 and $900 for a session, depending on the type of session. And then we give them a digital download. And so it's nice. We say, you know what, if that's all the money that we make on this session, I'm happy with having spent that time. We have our workflow down that a typical session, we can have edited in about a half an hour. So I'm going to shoot for an hour. I'm going to edit for a half an hour. I have a babysitter. I have all these things, but I'm still bringing in a really nice hourly wage. Okay. So at this point, like, our name has gotten out there and it works really nice, but we were able to cultivate a style as we, we're putting together our portfolio. It was, okay, this is what we kind of want this to look like. This is what we want to have out there. But what we've always done is, in having, yes, you have these digital downloads, pick one image and included in that price, you get a 16 by 20 canvas. Because here's the thing, we wanted these people who were picking us, we wanted them to put it on their wall. Okay, so, we made web versions so they could show them off to their friends, to their family on social media. And then we made sure, hey, let's make sure that you have something to put on your wall, because we want you and we want your friends, to come in and say, wow, that is great. You guys look amazing. Hey, who did that? Because a lot of times the people that value you and are choosing you for your artistic image and your artistic vision, their friends are going to be very similarly minded. We did a lot of things like having referral programs. Hey, if you refer your friends and family, they'll get $50 off and you will get another free 8x10 for every one of these people that you refer. Really not a lot of money on my end, but it makes a really great brand ambassador with people who value me, marketing to other people who also value me as an artist, my style, my vision, and are willing to pay my prices. And they understand, hey, yeah, you got to put food on the table. You've got to charge a living wage. So finding, people who, okay, and even some of those people who at the beginning who you say, okay, I'm going to take charge. You're getting this for free because I'm filling up my portfolio. Okay, great. But those people who you said, but I'm taking control, you've got to wear this. This session is going to look like this. This is what's going to happen. Those people were willing to say, hey, I am invested in your vision. So even those people, a lot of their tangential friends and neighbors can be ones that are going to invest in you. So you want to look for who that target audience is. Who are they and how can you get into those circles? So that's where a lot of times it's making sure that you have your images on their wall, even if it's just that one print is offered, even just one, something that they're going to be so happy to get up on their wall so that they can show it off. That's important. That's really important. The other thing too that you can do, is, as you're getting started doing mini sessions, but not $25 mini sessions. It needs to be, hey, this is a significant deal that I am offering you. And, so for 20 minutes, it's going to be $250 for a mini session. You'll get 10 images. And, again, that gets clients in the door and interested, but it establishes the value. Does that make sense? So it's always, even if you offer a discount, even if you offer these things to get people in, does that make sense? You can say, hey, just so you know, this is how much you will be paying eventually. This is what, I am worth as a photographer. And you work your way up there, but you keep putting that number out there so that, one, you don't end up with people who are just like, oh, this is worth $0, or, you know what I mean? This is the lowest price photographer that I could find. They're worth, this much. You say, no, you are getting a fantastic deal to be able to work with me at this price. So I'm not saying you have to jump in and immediately be like, okay, it's $500 or bust, because I get it. That's hard. You do have to fight through the cheapies. But the thing is the cheapies, they're never going to have the quality that you do when you put in that time and you skill build, when you learn and grow and you are doing all these things. That is where, okay, establish that value. And here's the thing. There are some people that if you say, hey, I'm charging $25, I'm charging $100, I'm charging whatever, there's a lot of people who are going to look right over you. They're going to say, you know what? How is that going to be a good photographer? You can't stay in business for $25. So I'm going to look right past you. And a lot of times those are the clients that you want, the ones who are going to say, hey, this is fantastic. I mean, Crystal and I, okay, so let me tell you this story. We have so many stories. That's what happens when you're in business for like a decade. You end up with a lot of stories, but they're learning stories. So, okay, so we needed a new website for our photography. And so, like I said, we've just been so busy. We did not create, we were like, we don't have time to create a website. So we had a guy and he charged us $4,000. Okay, listen, $4,000 to put together a client website. So we pay him and he took off. We had like half of a website built and he totally just did not finish it, took off. And we were like, crap. Because one, that's $4,000. And, I don't want to pay $4,000 again. And two, it's kind of emotional. You're like, geez, I don't want to deal with this. This is upsetting. And so I'll tell you what, we still have just like not much of a website because we just, yeah. Anyway, but here's the thing. We have been crazy shooting. Like we, hardly had a break last year. It was just wedding after wedding, families in between. We shot and shot and shot last year. And the thing is, we didn't even have a website. We weren't even marketing. It was all just word of mouth. Like people said, hey, you know what? And it was great because people would lead in with, hey, I know you are so busy. Can you possibly fit us in? How can we get on your schedule? And it was fantastic because now at this point, people have an understanding of, yeah, when you come to me, my rates are going to be more than you're seeing on Facebook. And you need to understand that, yeah, I'm busy and I'm sought after. And so people approach me with a lot of respect. And when I say, hey, this is my price, 9 times out of 10 people say, oh my gosh, I am so glad that I get, that I even could get in. This is great. And that's where you want to get. That's kind of the promised land of all of this is, wahoo, now people understand that you're not the cheapy photographer and they are going to invest in you. Hiring you is an investment and working with you is a privilege. So that is kind of the promised land. And that's where you just need to keep establishing your value. Even if you can't get those $500 clients in the door at the time, whatever reason it is that you aren't at that point yet, you come up with, hey, whatever, for whatever reason, the $500 clients aren't coming, but you say, okay, somebody tagged you in the yard sale post. You say, hey, you know what? I just wanted to let you know I'm having a portfolio building special. I'm typically $500, but I'm looking to expand into family photography, engagement photography, whatever it is. And I would be willing to shoot your session for $200 as my portfolio building special. This is typically a $500 value. Establishing that value, it's important, and it's important for other photographers too to see, oh yeah, okay, so photography is valued at, this much. I might be able to get it if I'm lucky. If I'm really lucky, one time I may be able to luck into a really good photographer's cheap session. But once they get great photography, I'll tell you what, it spoils them. They don't want to go back and use the $25 photographer. Do you know what I mean? But if you market yourself as, yeah, I'm the $25 photographer and it's fantastic, and then you say, yeah, well, okay, so now I'm going to be, the $500 photographer, and you haven't established that value. Those people, you know what? They're going to think that's fine. You were the $25 photographer, and I got great stuff. I'm just going to find another $25 photographer, because they don't understand that, it's not the camera. It's making the fantastic images, it's the photographer. So always establish your value. Even if you're working up, you always put that target number that you're hoping to get to. This is a $750 value, and I'm giving it to you right now for $300. Does that make sense? Like, make sure that you are valuing yourself, that you believe that you can do it, first of all. But second of all, make sure that other people understand what your target is. And they understand, hey, good photography is not cheap. That way you're not ripping the Band-Aid off. You kind of they're going, okay, this was really great. Or, if you still haven't worked up to it, those people who got the $250 portfolio building special, I'll tell you what, those ones are going to be the ones, who just jump right in when you say, hey, mini sessions. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, oh, it's another sale. I'm so excited. But this time you're not giving them the whole session. They just get that 15-minute chunk of time. Do you know what I mean? But they count themselves lucky that they got in on it. Does that make sense? We don't do a lot of mini sessions. We did a couple of mini sessions this last year. I wanted to shoot up in the canyon, and you have to pay, to shoot there. And so I was like, one session isn't going to really cover paying the shooting or the fee to shoot there, and I come home and say, yeah, I got good money. So it was $300 for those 20-minute slots, 10 images, and we were able to book, at that point, 10, 12, people. So one day it was 12 because it was a Saturday. But anyway, so it was just, and it was nice because then that fee, because you have to pay for a 3-day pass. And it's not a ton, but I wanted to make sure that it all got paid and whatever. Anyway, so then, we were able to bring in a few $1,000s overshooting a few times. And all those people were so excited because there's people who afar start to realize, hey, these guys are so good. I don't know though if I have $800 to $900 because not everyone is your target client. Okay. Like they're just not. Maybe you're not even your target client. You're sitting here going, man, I don't know. Would I pay $800 for photography? You know what? You don't have to even be your target client. Okay. You don't have to say, yeah, I have the money that I would pay that. That's okay. That's okay. That's fine. But you'll have people on the outside too who start to see, oh, she's so good, man. I wish I could get in with her. I don't have that kind of spare money. And some people who you think wouldn't have that kind of spare money, those people, I'll tell you what, those are the ones who sometimes surprise you. They're like, yeah, we've been saving for a while. We really want this family portrait, and it means a lot to them. But there's some people who, for whatever reason, they just can't pay it, So we did our mini session, and I'll tell you what, so many people who've always said, hey, I love your stuff. They always comment on the post, hey, that's really great. It's really nice. I love your stuff. Those people, they were the ones who just like, oh my gosh, I have a chance. Oh yes, I'm going to do this thing because the value has been consistently established. Does that make sense? We've consistently put out there, we are worth this much. We are worth this much. Understand that we're worth this much. And so then people start saying, yeah, those guys are worth that much. So when they see their opportunity, oh my gosh, $300, we have to do this because you know what? We can swing $300. Do you know what I mean? Wow, suddenly we get this opportunity. So I'm just out there to say, hey, okay, Cindy, what do you feel weird doing? Sorry, I will totally help you feel unweird. Establishing your value, or Candy, I'm so sorry. Candy, because seriously, putting out there, hey, we are worth this much. This is this much dollar value. It's important. And you know what? In the end, that raises the value, the integrity of the industry as a whole as well. Because all these people who say, I'll do that for $25, it sets an expectation. Do you know what I mean? Like if you went to Target to buy a vacuum, and every time that you saw vacuums, they were $25, like you would just think, oh, I need a new vacuum. And you would go in and maybe they have some vacuums, that are $300, but you think, you know what, vacuums are $25. Which seems heavily controversial on advertising. I'm trying to see. But yeah, so anyway, like if you always see, hey, they're all $25, you might keep buying them and they might keep breaking. Okay, how do you know what you're worth? Well, if you feel like you have the skills, because this is important. Do you have, hey, no, hey, sissy. That's okay. My 4-year-old likes to be naked, so I'm like, how do you know what you're worth? Well, have you gone through and done a cost analysis of what it takes to run your business? Have you figured out like how much do I have to make? Yeah, so like if you're not doing family sessions, don't do family sessions. Do what you want to do. This applies to really anything. Exactly. So yeah, like boudoir sessions. And I think people understand boudoir sessions a little bit more because you're like, look, I have a hair and makeup artist. I have to rent, a nice hotel room, People, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, no, I get it. You're like, hey, there's a lot of money that goes into this. And you're like, I understand. And so sometimes sessions like that, you can just explain my overhead is this much. Same thing can go with newborns and things like that, weddings, people understand. But you know what I mean? Whatever it is, just make sure you're establishing what your value is. But how do you know what you're worth? Well, first of all, how much does it take to run your business? Do you know how much it takes to run your business? How much are your taxes? What percentage are you giving to taxes? How much is your insurance every year? Are you properly insured? Are you insured enough that if your camera is dropped in a session, you're going to be okay? Do you know how much it costs, for your computer or your computer to be serviced? Do you know how much it costs, hey, to buy awesome actions like ours that cut your editing time from 4 hours down to a half an hour? Do you know how much it costs to have your camera serviced once a year, or to be part of something like Canon Professional Services or the Nikon equivalent? Do you know how much it costs? How much does your babysitter cost? How much does it cost, to have your proofing gallery? How much does it cost for you to pay for your website every single month? How much do each of these things cost? Does that make sense? Like, do you know how much you need to be making in a session just to cover your costs? And then how much do you need to bring home to pay for your mortgage, your bills, your utilities, your food, whatever? I mean, and you may have somebody that you're sharing with, your husband or your wife works and they make this much, but how much do you bring home as a professional? How much do you need to bring home to contribute to the family income in a meaningful way? Because for many people, this is their main livelihood. You don't see doctors who are like, it's fine because, my wife's a lawyer, so I'm only a part-time doctor who does this for fun, so I'll do your stitches for $20. No, there's a reasonable and customary rate, so kind of understand what are reasonable and customary. What do you need to bring in to cover your bills, to pay for your to cover your bills for your business, and then to bring home enough money that you've made some money. Does that make sense? That should be at least your bottom rate that you're at least hoping to get to. Because like I said, if you're not turning a profit within 3 years, the IRS goes, guess what? You're not a business. You're a hobby, and you can't count as a business anymore. You have to turn a profit within 3 years. So, I mean, the basic of how much are you worth? Well, if you're putting yourself out there as a business, you need to be covering, and it's not just, should I be calibrated? No, you absolutely should. Because if you are selling your images to somebody, you say, yeah, these are going to print, you need to know what is it that what are you creating? What colors are they actually? Because, hey babe, oh, let me help you. What colors are they actually? Because if you are not, no? Okay. If you're not actually calibrated, you could think, hey, I'm delivering these beautiful, warm, wonderful images. But in reality, they're super cold and dark. And you don't know what it is that you are giving your clients. So if you are charging your clients and telling them, hey, you're going to be able to, have family pictures on your wall and send these out in Christmas cards. Oh dear, I don't know. Send these out in Christmas cards. You need to make sure that it will happen, that will be fine, that they will send this off. And granted, you say, hey, I don't recommend you print at Walmart, but if you send this off to a lab that uses the ICC Color Consortium and calibrate so that you are going to be able to use these prints, okay? That's huge. And if you're printing your own things, I'll tell you what, the cost of one messed up print order would have paid for calibration. So, okay. So calibration, you have to pay your taxes. You don't want to get nailed for not paying your taxes. You have to be the one who is doing things like, okay, do you have your insurance? Do you have these things? You need to have these basic things. Do you know what I mean? And then there's just things like gas. That has to get paid for. The babysitter has to get paid for. Cleaning your gear, that has to get paid for. All of these things have to happen. Are you making enough that these things can be taken care of? Does that make sense? Where you're not like, what, I wish I could buy a calibrator, but I just can't afford it. If you find that you're saying that over and over, gee, I wish I could get insurance, but how am I going to pay $500 a year? Okay, because I have a lot of gear, okay, and I pay about $700, but $400 to $500 a year to have all your gear covered and to have errors and omissions insurance and to have things like that. You've got to have these things covered, okay? A business, am I worth it? No, you have to do this. I'll tell you what. So Crystal, when she first started, before we started, achoo, you're so silly. Before we first started as a business, she got offered, because Crystal is she's a phenom. She's just always been a natural talent. And she had some people come to her and say, hey, would you shoot my wedding? They offered her $500 to shoot her wedding. Crystal did not have any insurance. But she said, yeah, that's fine. So she went and shot this wonderful wedding. It was beautiful. And then she got home and her card had been corrupted. So she puts her card in and there are 0 images. Hey, Sissy, go get honey. No? Okay, this will have to be quick. Anyway, there were no, look at where's Pearl. Sad face. There were no images. They tried to recover them. They said, is there anything here? And this was, 10 years ago. And so, I mean, one, it would have cost a ton of money, but 2, the recovery was not that easy to do. And they said, no, there is nothing. So she told these guys, hey, look, I don't have this. They sued her for $5,000. And honestly, she's like, I was lucky. They could have sued me for so much more, but they sued her for $5,000 so they could rent a tux and flowers and kind of restage some of this stuff to get some pictures. And so she got paid the $500. She ended up paying $5,000. That is 10 years worth of insurance on like a basic policy. And just barely at 10 years in business, we finally hit the time that, if she would have had insurance, she's paid all these years for that mistake of not having the insurance the one time. It's a tough lesson. That's a tough lesson. When you're just starting out, that's a tough lesson to deal with. And so, you think, do I need insurance? Well, one time, if something happens, I mean, that was one corrupt card. There was nothing she could have done. It wasn't like, she didn't show up, if you just would have been a little more on the ball, do you know what I mean? It all would have been fine. No, crazy stuff can happen to anybody, crazy things. There's another photographer in our town. They went and shot a wedding. They were driving home. They stopped off at Kinko's for just like a little bit to make some copies. And somebody was following them from the venue and stole all the gear. Everything's gone. Not just her camera, not just, that, but the wedding, gone. The cards, gone. All of that, gone. Stuff happens that you go, who knew that was even going to happen? So you just need, things like insurance. So what are you worth? What does it take to run a business? If you're a photographer, you are worth paying. I mean, anybody who opens that business is, if you know what you're doing enough to open a business, you are worth at least enough to have your business be able to meet all its bills and you be able to take home some money. At the very least, that's what you're worth. As you get better, there's tons of really amazing photographers that are like, hey, a session with me, that's $2,000 to start. Eventually maybe that's where, you end up. That's awesome. But at the very least, you are worth covering all the bills to run a business correctly and to pay yourself enough to be able to say, okay, I can cover bills with this, You need to treat it that way. $25 for a session is not going to do it. You need to look at that and you need to start saying, okay, a hard look at what it really costs to run a business. That is a critical step as a business person. Okay, my kids are all like coming, and this little boy, he loves to be naked. So I'm going to let you go. Hey, Henry, stop. What? Okay, whoops, this way. Okay, so have a nice day. See you later.